Hi everyone, it's me, Sandy Cruz of Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. For years now, I've been bringing to you conversations about wellness from incredible guests from all over the world. Discover a fresh take on healthy living for midlife and beyond, one that embraces balance and reason, without letting only science dictate every aspect of our wellness. Join me and my guests as we explore ways that we can age gracefully with in-depth conversations about the thyroid, about hormones, and other alternative wellness options for you and your family. True wellness nurtures a healthy body, mind, spirit, and soul. And we cover all of these essential aspects to help you live a balanced, joyful life. Be sure to follow my show, rate it, review it, and share it. Always remember, my friends, balanced living works. Hi everyone, welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have Tricia Nelson, and we're going to talk all about emotional eating. I figured this is a great conversation to have. You know, a lot of people are thinking about their summer bods and all of that. So I thought this is a great way to end my season and kick off with my summer reboot series. I've decided to start my summer reboot series a little earlier because I have so many incredible episodes that I've recorded in the last year. So some of the episodes that I am going to replay will be all about sober living. Another one that's a great topic because many of us overconsume alcohol in the summer. So Jen Couch is a great advocate just for sober living. I'm going to have Christine Carlson, don't sweat the small stuff. She's coming back. I'm going to have Udo Erasmus. I'm going to have Richard Johnson talk to us all about sugar. Dr. David Rosensweet, his first recording with me, all about menopause. I'm going to replay that because in the fall, he's coming back to us with a brand new episode. I'm going to do another great episode, a reboot of my thyroid episode with Dr. Amy. I'm going to actually have Brenda come back to talk to us all about beam therapy, Yvette Rose, metaphysical anatomy. Oh my God, you guys, I have so many incredible episodes that I will replay for you so that you can listen to these episodes that you might have missed in the winter on your drive to that cottage. It's perfect time for that. A couple of announcements. So I do not do any promotion, meaning I don't use agencies. I don't have anybody to help me with my podcast editing. I don't use anybody to push my downloads or my views or anything or to help in that area. So I rely solely on my own personal social media, what I do there, and then on sharing. So I'm going to ask you, whoever is listening to this, to share with just one person. So that will go so far to keep me going into the new season starting in September. The other thing that really helps is for you to actually review my podcast, just with a few kind words. Probably on Apple is the best way. You can give a 5-star rating, and then you scroll down a little bit to write a review. If you write a review, let me know. Please send me an email, sandy@sandyknutrition.ca. I want to personally thank you if you do that for me, because it means the world, and it's how I keep having amazing guests come back each and every week. I'm still going to be around, so follow me. Even though I am going to be doing the summer reboot series, please be sure that you are following me on Instagram. I'm most active. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I have a private Facebook group. I have my page. I'm on TikTok. It's Sandy K Nutrition everywhere. Again, when you follow me, you actually support me and my content. I'm also a writer. I'm very active on Substack. So you can follow me there. It's more about explorative writing to help you think about your health as it relates to you as an individual versus telling you how to think about health. So you can follow me on Substack. It's Sandy Cruz, SandyKruse.substack.com. All of this will be in the show notes. I really just want to send out a very heartfelt thank you to all of you who follow my podcast wherever you're listening. You know that if you're not sure where you can follow, go to sandycruse.ca, SandyKruse.ca, and then you kind of scroll down a little bit and you'll see where my podcast is so that you can be sure to follow it. I'm everywhere, you guys. But I hit 5 years of episodes in February. I'm calling it going into my 5th season. It's just the way I split it up. That September I change over seasons. But this podcast, and I want to speak so from the heart, is solely from the heart. And we've come into this world of AI and this world of pay to play, and we really don't know who's paying for what title to gain what status and what's true, what's not. And what I can say is that I have built this brand primarily 100% on my own with very little help. And I do this because I am mostly a hero's journey. I'm not here to see how much money I can earn from this affiliate discount code, like a lot of these other wellness influencers. And I'm not trying to put them down. Listen, people need to earn money. But what I can say is that I come from a place of integrity. I come from a place of my hero's journey. And I come from a place of just wanting to help others live and figure out what it is they need to live a healthier and happier life. So I appreciate all of you. I want to thank you. And I'm now going to cut on through to this episode all about emotional eating. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have a special guest. Her name is Tricia Nelson. And Tricia lost 50 pounds by identifying and healing the underlying causes of her emotional eating. And that's what we're going to talk about today, you guys. It's going to be such a great conversation because Tricia is an emotional eating specialist and a TED Talks speaker whose talk has garnered over 2 million views on YouTube. She's the author of the #1 best-selling book, Heal Your Hunger, 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now. Tricia is the host of the podcast, The Heal Your Hunger Show, and has spent over 30 years researching the hidden causes of addictive personality. Tricia has been featured on NBC, CBS, KTLA, Fox, and Discovery Health. And today, as you guessed, we're going to be talking about emotional eating, but we're going to kind of hone in also on why it seems to kind of get worse as we get older. And I know this because there's so many of you who listen to my podcast, who follow me on Instagram, and we talk about this. It's like we never had this problem before. Why do we have it now? So it's going to be a great conversation with that. Welcome, Tricia. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be on your show.
Yeah. So I gave a little bit of a preamble there that you have lost 50 pounds and kept it off. Like, give us a detail on your story. I think that's very important to the conversation.
You bet. Yeah, I mean, the reason I do what I do is because it does come from my personal experience. My message comes from my mess. So, I think as far back as I can remember, I was an emotional eater. And I didn't really know what that meant. I was in my teens, and my sister came home one day from school and announced that she was an emotional eater. And I thought, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. So I'm like, that's not me. I just like food. But once you hear something, it's hard to unhear it. And what happened for me as I began to just observe my relationship with food, and it was different than my friends. Like we'd go out to eat somewhere, and they'd order a sandwich and it would come with fries. They'd eat their sandwich and pick at their fries. Well, I would pick at my fry. I mean, I would eat my fries and pick at my sandwich. Like I'm like, how? And I'd look at them and think, how could you ever leave French fries on your plate? That's the best part. And so for me, I was really somebody who was obsessed with food, obsessed with my weight. So it was, but really, I was 50 pounds overweight by the age of 21. And it was in part because I was not only an emotional eater, but I was a binge eater as well. And I could eat, 2,000 calories in a sitting, just sitting and watching TV. And I would go back for more cereal and more cereal, or bread or chips or, candies, whatever, ice cream. So I love sugar and carbs. And obviously I packed on pounds because of that. So that's kind of how it went for me. And I felt very hopeless because I had tried so many diets. I did so many diets and exercise programs, but I always put the weight back on. And it really wasn't until I started to identify the fact that I was an emotional eater and what that really meant. I met somebody who became my mentor who helped me. He had been morbidly obese. He lost over 100 pounds, not through diet, not through medications or anything, but really more on a spiritual journey of addressing the things he'd buried for so long. I mean, all kinds of emotions. It just wasn't it wasn't something I had ever dealt with. I mean, I had experiences as a child that I just buried with food. And so I was a snacker and a binger. And so it's just important, instead of slapping a diet on it, which will never last. I mean, 90% of all diets fail. I had to take that more introspective journey and do different things to heal my stress. And we can get into all that. But that was what happened. And then because I was able to lose weight and keep it off, I started helping my mentor help others. And for decades, that's what we've been doing. And I started my own company, Heal Your Hunger, about 8 years ago. To help women specifically and to help them online. I now have a version for men as well, but it was really important that I put in, a codified way, and it's my book as well, this step-by-step process to take this journey and to heal at a deeper level. So that's what I've been doing, and I love doing it.
That's great. I mean, I think a lot of people will be able to identify with what you just said. And I just want to preface this conversation. If we mention anything relating to disordered eating, I think it's important that we mention this. We are not giving any kind of medical advice here. If something comes up in conversation, it's for discussion purposes only. Please see your own practitioner on what might be right for you, because I know Tricia is an expert in emotional eating, but there's so much more that comes into that, like trauma, like childhood experiences and all of that. So I just think it's important that we mention that at the start of the conversation. But
Beautiful.
yeah,
Amen.
yeah. So I think it's a good place to start, Trisha, is what is emotional eating? Because, like, how do you identify that you're an emotional eater?
Yeah, good question. The to me, the simplest and really the easiest way to explain emotional eating is it's eating to change how you feel. It's eating to feel better. Obviously, you don't eat to feel worse. You eat to feel better. You end up feeling worse if you go overboard. But initially it's like, like I don't like I'm just it's nothing you put your finger on. You're just like, oftentimes people are like, I eat over boredom, which it may be more than that, but initially you're like, I want something to do. So you go to the refrigerator and you eat. Typically it's not actually boredom, it's an uncomfortability with just being with yourself and your emotions, or the gaps, the quiet. That's hard for people who are emotional eaters. We like activity, we like adrenaline, we like to be busy. Overeaters are overdoers, so we're on the go. And when we have that lull, it's uncomfortable and we want to fill it with something. So that's really what emotional eating is. And, as I said, some people are actual binge eaters like I was, meaning once you start, it's hard to stop. And then you go overboard, then you feel stuffed and sick and mad at yourself and your pants don't fit, and that kind of thing. So there's really a spectrum for emotional eating. And I have a quiz on my website that people can take, which will teach them if they're an emotional eater or a food addict or somewhere in between. And so it's a spectrum, and food addiction is on the higher end of that spectrum. And I was definitely a food addict. And if you go by the kind of well-known or clinical telltale signs of addiction. When you start, you have trouble controlling how much you take, like how much you eat or use anything. This is kind of classic signs of addiction in general. If you have negative consequences from what you're doing, if you have a hard time scaling back or moderating, if your health is impacted, if family members are saying something like, Mom, I want you to be able to see my grandkids, when they're born. I don't want you to die early, and things like finances are affected. So there's a lot of consequences that happen when we're binge eaters that people don't think about, or emotional eaters. And so the addiction side of it, when somebody takes that quiz on my website, they'll find out where they are on that spectrum. Some people are just regular old emotional eaters. And I think we're all emotional eaters to some degree. Like, I think we're hardwired to have an emotional connection with food. So we will eat. I mean, think of the beautiful side of it, which is a mother breastfeeding her child. It's a bonding experience, which is over food, if you will. So there's good sides of it as well. It's just when we take it too far. So the two things that really qualify where we end up on that spectrum, the first one is the amount of control we do have. Like, can we pull back? If we go on a cruise and it's all you can eat and we come home, we're 5 pounds heavier and we're like, I don't feel so great. I'm going to jog extra this week and I'm going to cut out sweets. And then boom, those 5 pounds are off. That's someone with a lot of control. But there's other people like me who will come back, we're 5 pounds heavier, and it's like we've opened the gate and then we just can't close the gate again. And so those 5 pounds turn into 10, turn to 15, and we've been in a funk for weeks on end. And so that's somebody who's on the higher end of the spectrum. They just don't have the control to course correct. And the other is consequences. If we're doing this yo-yo cycle, and I was a yo-yo dieter, so I'd lose 10, gain 20, lose 15, gain 10, I was all over the map. And I had like 5 different sizes of pants in my closet because I never knew what size I was going to be. If that's more what we do, we're going to have consequences, especially the longer we do it. So you talked about women who are older. My experiences and my clients are older. They're 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and they've been at this for a long time. They've been trying to get control for a long time. They've tried numerous diets and exercise plans, and their body's beat up. Their body's beat up. They're diabetic, or pre-diabetic. Their hormones are definitely all whacked out. And there's all kinds of, heart issues and skin issues and autoimmune issues and things that happen when we beat our bodies up for long enough, and especially with really crappy, unhealthy food.
Question, in terms of women, I don't know if you know this. What are the stats of women? I'm going to say women are more emotional eaters than men. Would you agree with that or no? You would know that better than I would.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I get very few inquiries from men. I mean, I'm not a man, but I definitely think that's true. I think, women are more emotional, and we're also, I think we do use food probably for emotional reasons as a result as well. And we do have many hormonal shifts more often than men, and that just drives us again, eating to feel better, using food for comfort. I do think more women are emotional eaters than men, and more women are apt to admit it than men because men are a little more disconnected emotionally.
I also think that unbalanced hormones can be somewhat of a driver as well. I know, like, you're speaking more on the emotional side, but just as somebody who's worked with a lot of women who have had some issues with their hormones, that can sometimes be that driver. Like they don't feel well, or even if you're just sick, like it's almost like a way to kind of soften that feeling shitty feeling. You know what
A
I mean? Like,
100%. Yeah, eating to feel better. Like
yeah.
you don't feel yourself, and you're in a funk, or you feel a little depressed, and food works. I mean, the thing is it works. It works temporarily to pick up our mood, to make us feel better. It's just that it comes with a host of negative consequences, which is often just feeling worse, like we're feeling worse emotionally and physically. I mean, if you eat too much, you feel bad. You feel bad, and then you have all the, self-recrimination. Why did I do that? I wish I hadn't eaten that. And, I lack willpower. I'm lazy. It's like there's a whole lot of things that come with it. So it definitely makes us feel worse, but in the moment it works to make us feel better.
Yeah, and I know that stress is a big factor in this emotional eating landscape, and it's really interesting because I find myself I'll like I don't know if you would know this. Well, my daughter was sick at the age of 5. She was diagnosed with cancer. And during that time, Trisha, it was like food was like poison to me.
Mm.
I couldn't eat. I just couldn't. But other times when I can't, kind of like what you said, I can't identify that feeling. And then I'm like, I'll just like eat this, eat a little chocolate, eat a little this, little of that. I need the carbs. So, like, where do we even begin to identify? How do we start? I know you mentioned your quiz and kind of finding out what sort of an eater, but aren't most people kind of day to day different?
Absolutely. I think that what's really important is, and I love that we're having this conversation. And for those listening, it's really important that we just start observing, like observing our habits, just like I was observing that French fries were more important to me than they were to my friends. It's like that carb hit, that greasy, yummy food that I loved. That was an emotional choice for me. So we make emotional choices around food. Even somebody who's not a binge eater, they're like, oh, I'm not an emotional eater. But if you tend to want, bread over vegetables or pasta, if you go to a restaurant and you're always looking for the pasta option, the heavier option, those are emotional choices, or you prefer potatoes over broccoli or bananas over apples or berries, or, the heavier, more carb or sugar dense choices are emotional choices because those foods, they're heavier and they will coat our emotions. And again, we don't think I'm going to have pasta to coat my emotions. You're like, I just want pasta. But with this conversation comes awareness and people can start observing that their choices are like I want comfort. I want this food to do something for me, like to give me a hit that I'm lacking, you know? And so we really are, it's not just nourishment for us. And it's not that we shouldn't enjoy our food. I mean, we must enjoy our food. But if we're looking for more from that food, sometimes I'll say to my clients, like, what do you, that food you're obsessed with, what does it symbolize for you? Like, what are you trying to get from that food? And it's always like all these emotional things. Like, I want comfort, I want companionship, I want to feel better, you know, I want to feel safe and grounded. It's like all these emotional things we're trying to get from just an inanimate object, like just, you know, some flour and sugar, but it's like we're trying to get something from it that we need. It's something we're lacking emotionally. That's emotional eating. And if we can just observe what's really going on, it's a great start, like to realize, wow, like I want more from this food than the food can give me for sure.
That's so interesting that you talk about like carbs or, you were saying bananas as opposed to, I don't remember if you said berries or something lighter.
Yes,
And
yeah, later.
yeah, that the denser bread, like heavier foods, the more comfort it's giving us. Have you heard that? Certain food, I don't know if this is true, maybe but people who always need the crunch, like, give me a bag of chips, give me this. I know that salt, see, like, I'm going to look at it from a hormonal perspective.
Yeah,
Typically, salty foods would indicate there's stress, anger, because the salt, your adrenals, it's like a
yeah.
sign with the
Oh
adrenals and
yeah.
the stress.
Yep. Yep.
And then there's like you said, having bread, having pasta. It's like that heavy feeling. So does that mean you have heavier feelings? It's like, how do you even
I don't
correlate that?
think so. I don't typically go down that road of analyzing what foods do it for you because I think it's a little too analytical.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so I really feel like, you know, as an overall rule, we want the food to help us in whatever way we need help. I mean, I liked carbs and sugar. Was it the crunchy or the sweet or the, you know, smooth or the creamy or, you know, I don't, it's too in the weeds for me. Like I want food to change how I feel. That's what I focus on is I don't, and that means I don't want to feel what I'm feeling. You know, so to me, that's where we should be focusing, not analyzing, you know, how crunchy or soft or sweet our food is, but what we're trying to escape from, you know, what we're trying to distract from feeling. And to me, that's really important. So whatever somebody's drug of choice is, right? I mean, like what the food is that they really crave, it's just it we all, you know, different strokes for different folks, you know. And so I will say there's a tendency to eat the carbs and the sugar in part because they do give us more of a physiological hit, like a serotonin hit. They do calm us, you know, and emotional eaters are anxious people. Like anxiety runs high for us. And so we're going to want the foods that will calm our anxiety. I mean, steak won't necessarily do it, you know, so it's not usually meat we're overeating on. It's the carbs, you know, it's the carbs which metabolize as sugar in our bodies and give us that quick hit. They also give us that quick hit of energy, you know, and often we are stressed out and we're tired. We need a nap, but we're looking in the refrigerator for something to nosh on.
You know what? Actually, that's true when you say that. So, if I didn't have a great sleep, and I know that again, this can also relate to ghrelin and other hormones when you don't sleep well. So, like, I don't know about you, but like, if I don't have a good sleep, I will somehow, it's like I'm going to go all day like feeling like I'm missing something. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, yes, I like, and I'll feel that and I'll be like, oh crap, like I'm definitely eating a lot of garbage today. I didn't have a good sleep last night. Or people who are big drinkers of alcohol, that feeling, there's obviously a physical reason why you have gut rot because you drank booze the night before. But, like it's like all still tied to how you feel. And even after a nap, like if I'll take like a little nap, I'll be like, I'll immediately wake up and be like, I need to eat something, you
Mm,
know? And it's like all these feelings are always tied to food much more than just saying, I'm hungry. I have hunger pains,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like even
Yeah.
snacking.
We just don't think along those lines. We don't think along, we just want to be comforted in that moment, or get the energy boost in that moment. So it's really just about getting more conscious. We typically as a culture aren't tuned into our emotions. Like we have so many emotions over everything. Like everything that we do throughout the day, there's an emotional impact, and it may not be big. I mean, just going, sitting down and, having lunch or watching television show, it's not deeply impactful emotionally. But the point is, a phone call, an email, a deadline, these things all come with emotional impact, and we're just not tuned in. So we're just looking for food, and we don't realize there's a connection between our stress, how stressed out we are, how much pressure we feel, what thoughts are going through our head as we're trying to make a deadline. Like, I'm so slow. Why didn't I do it sooner? I'm not very smart. Otherwise, I'd get this. It'd be coming to me more easily. Like, there's a whole life going on inside of us that we're not very tuned into.
So what is okay? Like I agree. I think we live in a world of numbers. Like we're all numbers. Like let's numb through social media scrolling. Like
Yep.
I fully even admit to that. And I'll say to my husband, I'll be like, oh shit. Like I've been on TikTok for a half hour now. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
total
let me,
time suck.
right? Like it's like a time suck, but it's
Yeah.
numbing.
Yeah.
It's really, it's, I think the awareness is key. So, how do you teach somebody self-awareness?
Well, you have a conversation about it, right? Like, you can't unhear this conversation. And once you hear about numbing, about distracting from what we're feeling, it at least gets us closer, like closer to the solution. And the solution really is to tune in. Slowing down is big. As I said, overeaters are overdoers. So we tend to be super busy. We tend to love noise. So we might need to have the TV on or the radio on at all times. We're basically afraid to slow down and be with ourselves. Because when we're with ourselves, we have emotions and we don't want to feel. Like, the reason why we numb is because we don't want to feel what's going on inside of us. And I, at a young age, just decided feeling was for the birds. Like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want nothing to do with it. And so that's really what I needed to do is slow down. It's hard to do, and so it's really important to be in community with people who are on board with it. If you hang out with a bunch of runners and numbers, you're going to be running and numbing, whereas if you want to get more conscious and you want support to be more conscious, you're going to need to be in community with people who have that goal as well. We are who we hang out with. And so being with people who want to be more awake and conscious is going to be important. Not that you have to do that all day. You don't have to sit down and, be in the lotus position all day long meditating, but it does help to be around people who are craving that and who are seeking that. So it's not so strange or different to do that. I meditate twice a day. I meditate because it brings down my stress level, and I teach this to my clients as well. It brings down my stress, and stress is absolutely inextricably linked to how much we eat, because we stress eat. We eat to slow down. We eat to give us quick energy. And so if we have a more conscious way of reducing stress, which does include taking on less. We can't be all things to all people, and emotional eaters want to be. And so pulling back and realizing it's not realistic and it's not paying off to try to be all things to all people, having boundaries in our time, pulling back and having some self-care in our day, is really, really important. Not going eight to faint every day, filling your calendar with things to do and people to help. It's like we have to change our lives. And I often say, Sandy, that it's a living problem more than an eating problem. Like we have to change how we live. We can't be running around like a chicken with our head cut off and not be overweight. Like it's going to impact our hormones, obviously, but it's going to impact literally how much we eat. Because when you're tired and you're busy, over busy and stressed and then bitchy, and then you have guilt because you're bitchy, right? Or you're not spending enough time with your kids and you're beating yourself up about it, all that leads to overeating, So we can't just people always, again, trying to slap a diet on it, or a pill now, but that's not solving the real issue. And the real issue is we need self-care. We
Mhm.
need to slow down. Need to learn how to stop running from ourselves and face what it is we think is so horrible, which isn't horrible at all. We're good people.
Yeah, but that's also part of addictions overall. I know this conversation isn't about other addictions, but
But it definitely applies.
it definitely applies
Yeah.
because one of the things that I've looked at this. I don't know. Do you know who Dr. Bradley Nelson is?
No.
No. Anyway, there's a lot of these practitioners who talk about the emotional aspect to pain, to problems, to addictions, and everything like that. And so people don't want to feel, so they numb, just like
Yeah.
what you're saying. And it's like when you open up the curtains and look inside, sometimes you're like, ooh, I don't want to look. Let's close that back up again.
Nobody wants to look.
Because
I mean, it's not a comfortable thing
it's
to
hard to
do.
look, Tricia,
Yes,
sometimes.
it's not easy, I mean, I have a whole program based on helping people clear the things that they're running from, because you really can't do it alone because you're just so scared. You're so scared, and you also have a lifetime of running. Like we've built into this habit. And it's not, as I said, whatever there is not so terrible. They're just uncomfortable emotions.
You remember during COVID, I don't know if you were on TikTok or Instagram. During that time, there was this trend of women and wine o'clock. And they would grab their bottle of
Yeah,
wine and they'd go and, it would always be like in joke, in fun. But I was like, wow, like this becoming a trend is basically saying, let's mask how we're really feeling right now during this pandemic
yeah,
and mask it with wine
yeah,
and make it fun. And let's pretend it's not even existing. It's kind
right.
of the same thing with eating. It's like, you have these feelings that are uncomfortable for you, but let's just have a big old bag of chips and pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of laugh it off and haha, Um, and people probably prefer to admit that they're stress eaters before they admit they're emotional eaters because emotional sounds more like you're messed up or something. But first of all, it's the same thing. Stress eating and emotional eating is the same thing. Um, and 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 the thing is, if somebody doesn't have a big consequence from it, they're probably not going to change it. Like everybody's using something. It's when it really hurts you. And when you're an overeater and you gain weight and you have to live in the cultural shame of being overweight, that's when you get a little bit more interested. Or if you have health issues on account of your eating. I mean, I have clients who aren't overweight at all. They're sugar addicts or whatever, but they have major health issues because of their eating habits. They're just not eating healthy. And now with the medications, people can get away with making crappy choices. You can take a medication and just have a diet of chocolate and pasta. So imagine what that's doing to people's health. Now there isn't a consequence from an obvious consequence of the weight. So that presents some other issues. So It's hard to be motivated if if you're not up against the wall, but hopefully with this conversation, people will want health, and they're probably wouldn't be listening if they didn't. So that's good.
Yeah, and the big thing too that I love people to kind of understand why the food that you're eating is so important is as we age, we have a few things going against us. We have with women, it's menopause. With men, they have andropause. They don't lose their testosterone lowers. There's a lot of things, a lot of times digestion is an issue. And it doesn't all come into play until you're around, 45, 50, a little older. You hear of a lot of people who have diagnoses of autoimmune disease. You have a lot of people like cancer, so this is why, as a nutritionist, I'm always like, the building blocks are important. And one of the reasons why, I'm always like, listen, you can take one of those really fancy injections, but are you supplying your body with what it needs to age well? How
Yeah.
are, how what kind of quality are those building blocks that you're giving your body? So that's why it's so important. Like the stuff I eat, it's not always my first choice, but I do it because I'm like, I got to support my health. So,
Yeah.
I'll buy
Well,
those big
yeah.
old bags of the veggies that are frozen from Costco, and I make sure that I grill half of a plate of veggies, always. And then my protein, and sure, maybe I'll have a little piece of bread, but it's not the staple.
Yeah. That's so important. And what's important for those who are like, yeah, but I want the bread, I totally get it. We need to nourish ourselves in other ways as a replacement. You can't just take away the bread. You have to be nourished in other ways. And that's nourishment we have to give ourselves. So having a morning routine, I call it putting money in your spiritual bank account. You have to fill the bank with some money so you can spend it. If you don't, you're just withdrawing and you're in the red. So start your day with meditation, prayer, spiritual readings, like get nourished. Nourish yourself with the real food, soul food, connection, community. Like these things will feed you. You have to be fed. We're hungry. It's not food we're actually hungry for. So we have to get fed. So there's other ways to feed ourselves, and then we don't need the food. But the food, like that's what we're reaching for is, we want connection. We want a feeling of connection. I mean, last weekend I called like five girlfriends and I'm like, I'm lonely. I left messages. Of course, I got everybody's voicemail, but I'm like, I'm lonely and I need connection because I have an online business and I don't realize I'm missing that human connection that I want more of. I need more of because that's what we're really hungry for. So I had to reach out. I had to make us some phone calls. And my partner was like, "Oh, that sounds so needy." I'm like, "Well, tough shit. Like I feel I feel a need for girlfriend time. Like I need some girlfriend time. I need that oxytocin. I'm not getting it." So we have to nourish ourselves in the proper way. Otherwise, it's just our fallback is food and wine
Mm, I
and
love
gummies.
that. That's so important though. And I think I don't know about you, but the older I get, having really, really enriching relationships are
Yeah.
important. It's not about having 20 girlfriends, it's about having like three that are my besties that we could sit down and have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea together and just really talk. And having these kinds of relationships I think are very, very important. I couldn't agree with you more. I personally start my day every day with journaling. But that really resonates with me because I'm a writer at heart. I love to write. So, I think that this is all really important and it really kind of sets a foundation for a successful day of eating, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for reaching for I mean, it just makes it when you're nourished in other ways, it makes it easier to not reach for food for that quick energy or that quick hit. When you feel it's just easier to make choices that are self-caring.
Do you ever, I don't know if you've heard of this, but I remember hearing one person, I think they were on my podcast, they were talking about not eating disorders, but disordered eating patterns. And they said, like, if you're that person that always kind of gets up and goes to the pantry, like there's ways in which you can kind of stop yourself and think. Like, I don't know, do you have any tactics like that you help people with?
Yeah, really important, first of all, in my experience, to eat 3 meals with nothing in between. So I call it 3 meal magic. And people love to fast or skip meals. And I'd say it doesn't pay off if you're an emotional eater. It does not pay off because you'll end up overeating at other.
100%. 100%. You heard it here. I became insulin resistant, Trisha, while listening to all of the big gurus about intermittent fasting. And you know why? Because I was doing the 16-8 fast. So I wouldn't eat my first meal until like 11:30, and then I would fucking binge for eight
I know.
hours.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, all right, my eating window's open. Let's
Yes.
go.
That's right. And that's true for emotional eaters. It's just it is destabilizing. And it's I mean, it's just another way to beat up our bodies. And I'm not saying IF is terrible. I like to have 12 hours between my dinner and my breakfast, just for a little bit, of benefit. But I need 3 meals with like 4 or 5 hours in between each meal. And when I do that, it's not only a really like self-caring way to eat because you're not doing these erratic swings. You're not getting super hungry. It's a grounding thing. And not only that, but you get to learn what your emotions are. Because when you're over hungry, you don't know that you're having emotions. You just feel starvation, like you just feel hungry or deprived. But if you have a regular way of eating, then you start to observe just emotions that are between meals. If you're snacking all day, you have no idea what you're feeling. And if you're too hungry, you have no idea what you're feeling. And so the 3 meal magic plan is so good because you can start to identify, what sadness feels like, what anxiety feels like, or whatever. And you're not just feeding it with food. So that's one thing. But also, it's just a really self-loving way to eat. And when we've been doing so many diets and so many erratic plans and hacks for so long, it's a self-abusive, and it's like, would you say to your sweet baby daughter, oh, honey, you're not going to eat for 16 hours because you're going to shed a few pounds? It's like you would never do that to your daughter. Like, so feed yourself how you would feed your child, right? With regular meals, let them know you've got their back. Like, you're going to pay attention to when they need to eat again. You're going to prepare a meal that tastes good and has love in it. We don't do that for ourselves, but we would never abuse our kids that way. But why don't we treat ourselves the way we would treat our children? What we need to start focusing on.
I love that. What I figured out was I had to stop listening to you know, all this health advice that was online and start paying attention to what worked for me. And
Mhm.
eating exactly, it's so interesting because like I eat exactly like you're saying. And ever since I did that, I know when I'm hungry, Trisha. I
Yeah.
know. I'm like, okay, 4 or 5 hours or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I'm hungry now.
And it feels good to have hunger pangs.
Yes.
Because it means you're not overeating. It's like you're eating what your body needs. Your body's, digesting and using the energy and putting the ingredients, nutrients where they need to go, using them how they're meant to be used. And then it's like, oh, time for more food that I can use for nourishing my body. And it actually feels good. It's just scary for people, to feel hunger. And it's like we have to learn how to deal with hunger, not starvation, but just literal, like those natural hunger pangs. And if you've been eating in wacky, erratic ways, or you're a binge eater, it takes some time to get to that place of feeling good when you feel hungry.
A couple of things I just want before we close off. What's the difference between being a food addict and stress eating?
Well, I would say, like I said before, it's the control and the consequences. So those are the two telltale signs. So stress eating is like you eat extra because it gives you a boost of energy and you distract. Like that's a lot of people do that. But that doesn't mean you're going to fall down the rabbit hole and eat 3,000 calories of, popcorn and ice cream in front of the TV. So it's if you have control, like you eat a little bit extra, that's stress eating. Food addiction is when you go into a dark hole. You go down the rabbit hole and you eat too much and you feel bad. And also consequences, is it affecting your life? Isn't like too many potato chips really, ruining your life? But if you do that on a regular basis because you can't deal with your life or your marriage, which needs attention, then you're starting to have health effects because you're eating really unhealthy foods, in a perpetual way. So it's controlling consequences.
But I guess you can be both.
Oh, well, yeah, emotional eaters are stress eaters. Food addicts are stress eaters. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing is in my quiz, if somebody takes that quiz and they're on the high end of the spectrum, they get a higher score and they're food addicts, they are inherently emotional eaters or stress eaters. But if you're on the low end of the spectrum, you're not a food addict just because you're an emotional eater.
So okay, if somebody was to join your program, what would they expect?
Um, what happens in my program is I've basically laid out a step-by-step process for overcoming emotional eating and food addiction. And I layer on each mod, so I have modules that people go through. We have group calls on Zoom. People get coached. I mean, it's a whole comprehensive program because this is a big deal. We're overcoming a lifelong habit that, by the way, is one of the hardest addictive habits to overcome. People are always like, they have this inherent embarrassment that they might need to get coached to change their food, relationship. But to me, it's the hardest relationship of everything because you have to eat. It's not like alcohol where you can put the plug in the jug and you just stay out of bars. No, you can't get away from food. You have to eat 3 times a day. You have to take the tiger out of the cage, excuse me, pet the little kitty, and then put it back in the cage without getting your ass torn off. So
Yeah.
it's much harder. So you need more support. And people don't mind going to the gym and hiring a trainer to make them do all the reps, but when it comes to our relationship with food, we're like, no, I got it. I'll handle it. Because there's like shame involved, and people are like, oh, how bad am I that I would need a coach? It's like, it's the hardest of all addictive habits to overcome. You've had the habit probably for decades, so you're gonna need some help. So that's what I do is we do a lot in groups, like on Zoom. People from all over the world join my program, but we do it through Zoom because Zoom is amazing, right? And you can be anywhere. But also we do it in groups because people always think they're the only ones who have done the terrible bad things. My TEDx talk that you mentioned at the beginning, I start out my talk talking about eating out of the garbage, and there's like all these slew of comments. Oh my God, I've done that. Like you throw away your binge foods. You're like, I can't eat anymore. I'm done with that food. I'm never eating that again. And then later you're like, oh, I know there's cookies in there, you know? So, so everybody thinks they're the only ones. And then we beat the shit out of ourselves because of it. And then that perpetuates the behavior. And so in groups, women are like, oh, I get, like, I felt that way. Oh, I did that thing, and so it's, again, that's soul food. Community is soul food. We have to have connection and community because that's what we're really hungry for. So everything is in groups, and we do one-on-one coaching as well. And then I walk people through a process of healing, which does include self-care. It does include community. It includes also, like you said, the writing, the journaling. People are starting to get in touch with their emotions. They write about it, they talk about it, they pray about it. There's a process for being able to unload those things that we usually stuff down with food. And so, but it takes time to kind of learn. It's a new behavior for us to not just immediately, as soon as we're uncomfortable, go to the refrigerator and eat. And the longer somebody's been overeating, the more help they're going to need, the more support they're going to need, the more time it's going to take to turn it around, and no diet can do that. I mean, we've been medicating for decades with food.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would benefit from your program. Let us know where they can find you, Tricia.
Absolutely. My website is Heal Your Hunger, HEAL, Heal Your Hunger. And that's got everything on it. My Instagram is Tricia Nelson _, but on my website, my TEDx talk is there, my podcast is there, the Heal Your Hunger show, access to my book is there. So it's a good, and the quiz, definitely start with a quiz because that's a great place to start, and then you get steps after that.
That's so great. Thank you so much for all you do, Tricia. It was really a great chat today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all you do.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to share it with someone you know might benefit. And always remember, when you rate, review, subscribe, you help to support my content and help me to keep going and bringing these conversations to you each and every week. Join me next week for a new topic, new guest, new exciting conversations to help you live your best life.